Semi-final number 2 in the top left of Dragon Scales. It is Spirits. Bottom right is Trigger. The other semi-final is a Laser versus Clem, which is going to be on the foreign language streams. Just coincidentally. The way that sometimes these open cups work out. But Spirit vs. Trigger should be a fun PvT. I do think Spirit's going to win, because Spirit's been playing so freaking well lately. But Trigger, a little bit of an Estrella Lights, someone who has some unique builds or styles, decision making in this matchup, and can create some very neat, what's the word here? Words are hard. Very, I can't, the word that keeps coming to my mind is clumsy. That's not necessarily like a good term. Scrappy, there you go, that's a good term. It creates scrappy PvTs. I think it's what Estrella has become really known for in PvT, and Trigger can do that too. The Trigger does have less experience, I suppose you would say, against Terran players. North America doesn't field a lot of very top tier Terran players. I love the ones that they do, love those guys, but yeah, you just have to be honest, they're not top tier, right? So not in the level of a Spirit or Hirmer or Clem. And then on the European server, where Trigger plays probably exclusively, he also doesn't, you don't face that many Terrans on the ladder either. It is still Protoss land, so Trigger's facing many more top Protosses who are all fighting to just be like a little bit ahead of each other, right? There's like 15 great Protosses that are trying to become the next best one, and they're all fighting for that. But Terrans, you know, the order has kind of been set to a certain degree. Clem here, Marine, Spirit, but then depending on which matchup they're having difficulty with that day, depending on if it's an open cup versus a tournament versus the European regionals, you know, it all could be different placements. So here, Marine can sometimes be seen as better than Clem. Spirit can actually get better performance in open cups than either one of them, depending on how the bracket works out. So it's a bit up in the air for that, but they're definitely top 3. No question about that. So Trigger is supposed to be an underdog here, just placement-wise, history-wise, and practice-wise. Whereas Spirit, being on the European server, does play versus Protoss all the freaking time. And has really done a lot with that practice in terms of widening the scope of how he plays this matchup. It's no longer just macro, macro, macro for him. Which it wasn't always like just 100% macro, but anytime that he would throw out the occasional not 2-3 CC build, he would not look particularly good with it. Now I think it looks good with it. So we have a Hellion build coming out from Spirit. Trigger knows about it. He actually went for a faster sentry, so he gets a really fast hallucination. Now that puts him at 1 battle unit less, basically. The sentry, it tickles. It doesn't even have energy to force field, right? So that's the problem with this type of opener. If someone comes at you with a fast opener in the early game, which I would consider this to be exactly that, having that sentry is not exactly helpful. I'd rather have a 3rd stalker. The sentry goes down, so in terms of like, was it worth the investment? Kind of not. Because when it's scouted, it didn't necessarily help stop from dealing damage. That said, the Hellions aren't getting too many probes. Only 2 Hellions, right? So they weren't one-shotting. 1 Hellion got in the main. Got a scout on how many gateways are available. Knows that Trigger's going to go up to 3 gateways. But 3 gateways is kind of a... Okay, there's the 4th gateway. I was going to say 3 gateways is a bit of a... You know, it's not actually the aggressive 4 gate that we would want. And I don't think expanding off of 3 gateways would make much sense either. 3 gateways is usually what you would do if you're playing defensive or want a little bit of wiggle room. I think he just wants to attack, and that proxy gateway certainly signals that. He will go ahead and 4 gate against Spirit, but it's a bit delayed. It's figured out. The Banshee saw it, right? Yeah, the Banshee saw it.
Additional supply depots.
And Spirit, he's so used to getting 4 gated. I don't think this guy ever doesn't go for 2 tanks immediately. There are some Terrans that they do mix in no tank builds, but especially when you're going for something a little bit dangerous like a Banshee opener, which these also aren't particularly good fighting units a lot of the time. Sometimes they work really well with like a one base all in, but yeah. You're gonna be a little light on the bio. I don't think your tank count gets affected, actually. But then your Banshees are going to be at home, possibly, to help like to defend. They're going to be attacking, so they can be a bit of a double-edged sword. In this case, I think Spirit is getting to do his thing. He did the Hellion opener. He did the Banshees and the tanks. He's getting his production. He had to take a brief pause in the maybe SCV production department to build a couple of bunkers. They get salvaged. And he still knows what he wants to do, what he's going to. Where Trigger definitely is on a journey. Spirit sees the road ahead of him as if it was a direct line. Trigger is seeing winding roads and those roads that like go over the side of the cliff and don't have like a safety bar. Like it doesn't look particularly good. It looks a bit dangerous. That's Trigger right now. Takes some damage from the opener. 4 gates, but then doesn't actually go for it. Builds a third base. Probes get misrallied. Stalkers have not been on the other side of the map at all because they've been at home defending the Banshees, which they did very well. So I do want to give some credit there to Trigger. He did not take damage from the Banshees. But still. So that Trigger's road is more winding. I had 7 probes. That's about good enough, basically. About good enough. 8, there you go. That's perfect. But Spirit does have his 3rd CC done, production on the way, stim combat shields 1-1. Okay, decent grab on that tank there from Trigger. Respect. And seems to be playing fairly conservatively overall. This start coming down is actually quite surprising, but if Spirit doesn't win with some type of 2-base situation, he does seem to fall back on his super tight defense 3-base. So Trigger might look to be in an okay position right now. After all, he's got his 3 bases saturated. He's got his Colossus, number 2, is about to pop. He should have at least one of his upgrades. And it's their Thermal Lance. You know, it seems like an okay situation, but Spirit, he really is about to just kind of pop off. All of his upgrades complete in that production tab. All of his production is now finalized, so he's all his add-ons, and he's producing a hell of a lot. He goes right to a double drop, which Spirit, I'm not sure he actually saw. And the Raven's here, kind of making sure that there's no observer. It looks like it had it slapped on an auto turret for some reason. I'm not sure why. Oh, it did see an observer. That's why. It killed an observer. Oh, that is nasty. That is nasty stuff. Looks like another drop is going to be sent out, but that actually turned sour. Spirit realizing now he's about to be attacked. Trigger, I mean, yeah, what do you do now, actually? It's going to go home. He has a recall. There it is. Going to use the recall on most of his army, and Spirit is not particularly quick to I guess he wanted to see if it was going to be too much or too little or whatever it was, but oh, Trigger might have actually chosen a very good time to attack. Spirit, not realizing that Trigger was going to be aggressive, started to send his units every which way, right? He loses a tank there, he loses a tank there, his drop is over there, not dealing with this attack here. And now, Spirit's actually in a ton of trouble. Trigger might have had a bit of a more difficult road to this part of the game, but once he found his footing, he knew exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted to be aggressive. And you can be a certain type of aggressive with Colossus. You can hover around someone, especially if you killed their tanks. Their tanks acting as that zoning units, since they don't have Vikings yet, right? So the Colossus just laugh at the bio as it tries to catch up to the Colossus range. And then you use force fields to also make sure they don't overwhelm you. And you kind of just posture and you stay there, right? But in this case, since it went all topsy-turvy, Trigger just actually had a moment where he could engage. He could take out the 3rd base. But Spirit, not want to give up too easily, does a quad drop into the main. It's somewhat effective. I can't even say it was really all that effective. I'm going to kill a couple of units, but the Colossus still live. Do they, though? Oh, Jesus. Okay. They could have. I swear they could have. So one does go down. And an attack on the left side from Spirit as well. Spirit now feeling the groove, perhaps, but does he have enough units? Did he already take too much damage? I think he has. The Nexus of Trigger does go down, but he's got a 4th Nexus building. He still has a very comfortable army supply. It'd be more comfy if he didn't lose a second Colossus, I'll give him that, but Spirit, he's the one that had to abandon ship harder than what Trigger had to do. And once again, he has to abandon ship. It's like the meme of the door cranking, and they're like, raise the door, lower the door, raise it a little bit. That's what Spirit's in right now. The Trigger just has 20 more army supply. A couple Liberators look quite intimidating, as Trigger's home army is not all that large. In fact, it's basically non-existent. So those Liberators are adding quite a bit. Trigger's main army is over here. Again, Liberators pop out, though, to perhaps save the day. Spirit choosing a very good time to go into Liberator production. You know, it's not like it's a totally boring 4 base versus 4 base scenario where Liberators are expected. I mean, he just chose to go into them, and they might be perfect. He just killed the 4th base. Trigger's still not mining from his 3rd. Lifted in the main base, used the Liberator range to go ahead and kill that Colossus. Now, most of the gate units already got up to the high ground. A recall was also used, so Spirit was inevitably going to have to move away there. But the Liberator's still getting some damage done. The Drop's getting some damage done. The Natural, however, forced to be lifted from Spirit. He does have all 3 orbitals still living, but he's down 20 army supply. He's down 17 workers. 3rd base of Trigger finally up and running. Trigger still wins, right? Like, things are happening, but Spirit isn't really making headway. He's not digging into the army count. He's digging into the economy a little bit, but he's not forcing Trigger to have to emergency remake a bunch of army. The army has stayed fairly consistent. Just the Colossus and the second Colossus and a handful of units here and there, but not comparable to Spirit's position. I do love Spirit, though. I love him living up to his name. 50 armory supply down at this point and still trying to be aggressive. Trigger once again going into the 3rd as Spirit tries to find a 4th. No 4th, so that might give him some false hope. But really, the army of Trigger is too good. At 40 army supply extra. Liberators would have to get, like, all the shots, basically. And the Liberators are actually dying. Ghost didn't make that much of a difference against this particular army either. And while Spirit has, once again, another attack, he just has already taken too much damage. You can see, Spirit, when he has tools to play with, will be every which way. He'll be awesome. But he got hit before he was actually ready to play around. He didn't go for a very biocentric opener, so he didn't have a lot of that mobility and a lot of those kind of stable power units. He was going for those Banshees, which totally failed. They totally failed. So while his spine of his build was fine, I think if he had figured out what Trigger was doing and he had defended instead of done his attacking, and then, you know, he was going to do another double dropout, and that actually got intercepted by Trigger's army, right? Like, things really just in 10 seconds went to shit for Spirit. If that hadn't have happened, I think his build is strong. I think his situation is still very strong. But kudos to Trigger for not playing docile, not playing cowardly, not playing just staying at home, hope he doesn't kill me. Because if he had, then I think he does absolutely die. But then he goes for the aggression. All right, so bottom left, we have Spirit down a game. In the top right, it is Trigger. It's on altitude as well for game 2. Now, Spirit has let this map through in almost all of his TVPs, actually. So he just likes this map. So I'm not going to totally dig into this whole, well, altitude's supposed to favor Protoss thing, because it still kind of is, but other Terrans say that. Apparently not Spirit. Spirit thinks this map is fine. More power to him. Spirit is also... Oh, NG blocking. Okay, I was like, this is too late to be a proxy. Like, what's going on here? So it should be engineering bay block. Into, perhaps, leaving it somewhere else to build a proxy starport. Trigger actually sends a probe off to the right side, mostly looking for a proxy barracks, like a Reaper would be here to hop up here. It was actually so close to finding the engineering bay block. It still finds it pretty quickly, and this is good news, because then Trigger can pull probes to deal with this. If it's already halfway done before the Protoss finds out, they have to run to the Zealot, they have to change their build. It's It's more annoying than this. So while 4 or 5 probes being off the mineral line does hit your build, you're basically nipping it in the bud. You're just being like, look, I'm going to take this hit now so it's less annoying later. I do think that's worth it for the Protoss. I mean, they think it's worth it. This is the response you should be doing if you find it out this quickly. Even gets a Nexus down before the SCV can block it again. I'm sure Spirit wanted to be just a little bit more annoying, and this has really been basically a non-issue for Trigger. He did go for a Cybernex core first. Maybe on such a large map, he was planning on going for a Nexus before Cybernex core, but it's not the biggest deal because both are very valid openers. He didn't even panic build a Zealot. He knew the probes were going to do the trick. Seems good to me. Also, not the most important thing in the game. Other things will be much more important. But generally, when it comes to this engineering bay block shenanigans, yes, it can do a lot of damage if the Protoss really mishandles it. They pull the probes, no, they don't pull the probes. They get a Zealot, no, they shouldn't get a Zealot. They should put the probes in. Oh, no, they shouldn't put the probes at all now. Actually, the Ninja Bay is actually almost done. Okay, shit. Like, that can be really bad. But I think it is more about starting a little bit of, like, almost a mental hit to your opponent so that the Protoss goes, ah, really? God, okay, fine. All right, fine. I just don't think that happened here. Spirit's going into reactor factories on a way, so it looks like it's so far away it's not going to be swapping onto the reactor. Definitely a 2-base build, though. Second gas is here. Bunker finishes in the nick of time. And the command center, ditto. Depth couldn't make it across fast enough. Reaper is doing a little bit of harassment in the main. I don't know why those probes were pulled, actually. Okay, the Reaper dies. So did the Adept by the looks of things, by the way. Oh, no. Where is she? Where is she? There you go. It was on the blue. I couldn't see it. I'm still bewildered by those 3 probes. Maybe chat. Maybe I'm just not thinking something obvious. Maybe they're pre-pulled so the Reaper, when he goes that north way, dies? I don't know. I don't know. Anyways. Phoenix on the way for Trigger. Spirit was able to scout that before the Reaper died, so the Reaper did its job. And he is responding as one should with the Cyclone. No starport, though. So not going to be adding on a Viking here. Actually just going into 3 barracks and a factory, so it's going to be a decent amount of bioproduction. I'm thinking about how this is going to work for the rest of the game with the map in mind. So I really like the Protoss play of going into Stargate Phoenix here. I think that is probably what every Protoss does on this map. I think the build works out fine for Trigger. You actually could have... I mean, he could have lifted the Cyclone. I guess he wouldn't have killed it, but, you know, just runs away from it. But Trigger gets all the scouting, all this harassment. He gets to know what his opponent's doing. He knows that without Medivacs, with this emphasis on bio, the attack is going to be coming a little bit later. Now, when the attack comes, it'll have a lot of bio, so it's not like it's, oh, easy peasy. But he does have some time to play around here. And in that time, you'd really hope that you were getting some SCV damage done. But Spirit, not about taking any damage, even building 2 missile turrets, something that other Terrans might not do in the same situation. Especially as it's not like some 3cc build where he can just spend cash wherever he wants. Not a trust fund baby. Well, supply blocked, actually. A Trigger really has done no damage to these Phoenix, and that's a little worrying. I mean, you really do want to get at least 2 SCVs, 3 SCVs. Marine there, Cyclone out of position. So you great. Okay, there we go. 2 SCVs, finally. Woo! Barely saves the Phoenix as well. And he's going to be going to Phoenix Charge. So Spirit needs to figure out that that is the plan, not Phoenix Colossus. On such a large, expansive map, mobility can be important. Phoenix Colossus, when you add those Colossus, kind of slower. Might be anticipating Phoenix Charge then because of that. Something that takes over the map a lot more. And something that is more aggressive. Trigger did display some aggression last game, and it was really well done. It worked out perfectly, but it was also somewhat part of his plan, and then it worked out perfectly, so that always feels good. But could still be pointing to a more aggressive Protoss. The Phoenix Charge wants to be out on the map. It wants the Terran to be out on the map like this, and Spirit is absolutely playing with fire. Yeah, the bio count's not bad, but the charge lock count is already decent. might want to wait for another warp in. This is a bit dangerous from the Protoss' side. No armor upgrade on the Zealots, but the Medivacs are being taken down by the Phoenix. The Bio is going to be left alone, and while it will trade out, you know, this does effectively end all aggression from the Terran. They'd have to build up back their Bio back at home, then run across the map, and that's going to take way too long. So Trigger, happy with this engagement. He even managed to save a handful of Zealots. So Spirit did not take a good engagement. It would have been just like a complete stomp if Trigger did have a couple more Zealots. But yeah, that worked out fine. Good read there from Trigger. And now Spirit's in a ton of trouble. Spirit is, well, not playing like he was in some previous weeks. I'll say that. That last game, hitting him when he was at his weakest, might have also hurt him a bit in terms of the momentum of his confidence in general. Or just not even confidence, because what that move out there was confidence. So it's not confidence. I feel like it's rattled his brain. You know, like these are some risky decisions that he's making. And perhaps he's too used to facing some of the other Protoss players of the region, like a Showtime, I guess, who might be a little more defensive. That could be it. But to be clear, Spirit's not dead. All right, just because he has to stop all aggression for a little while. That doesn't sound too good, though. He's gonna try and get some one-of-mine shots. They don't work so far, but maybe in the future. Oh! That almost dragged over the probes, dude. Anyways, and he is at least going to be, well, not comfortable, but at the very least, Spirit should know that Trigger is either committing to charge and is spending way too much time at home. So if they were just building a bunch of charge lots and sitting there on 3 bases doing absolutely nothing, that's a bad move for the Protoss. So he knows that that's not happening. He scouts a little bit with all these drops going on too, by the way, which are dealing some damage, not a lot though. So he's not going to be attacked because it's not mass charge lot. It's actually going to Colossus, which means that Spirit does have some time to micro harass exactly what he's doing. 14 probes have gone down, actually, and another couple more. 18. Hey, there you go. Actually, Trigger's really mishandling this follow-up. And then he gets to build up back at home. His macro's back at home. Now, these are a lot of units being sent across the map again, so if Trigger did show up on his doorstep with Colossus and charge lots, he would be in trouble. It'd be the exact same thing as last game. But right now, Trigger, not at all in that position on a much larger map, as well, is going to take forever to do that. So Spirit, his first attack was kind of a bop, didn't do anything at all. Trigger had to make that decision to either go for a bunch more charge lots and all in, which might have worked, we'll never know, or to change it over these Colossus, play a nice stable 3-base game, and don't take any follow-up damage, and he basically has failed in that department. The build is fine, the follow-up is fine, he was getting to a stable Protoss base and technology, but his defense against this harassment has been subpar. Spirit has wiggled his way back onto this game. He's now firmly in the lead, up 20-ish workers. He's got better upgrades, moving on to ghosts, continuing to do damage with the harassment. And this was just what he did last game, but he was way too far behind to really do it. Trigger at some point might throw up his hands and say, whatever, man, I'm just going to go for an all-in. But by the time he does that, and the length of the map as well to consider, ooh, this is a good cleanup. Although what am I got a lot of damage done. Spirit will probably be okay defending. That time Trigger says, fuck it. Gonna go across the map. Spirit will probably have enough army. But that is the only concern now I have for Spirit, is that he does too much drops. Oh, you know, losing the double drop over to the left side like that wasn't very good. So he loses that one too many times. Trigger does move across the map, and Spirit's not quite prepared. Like, that could still happen. But the time is running out for Trigger to do that. As Trigger adds on a Templar Archives, probably wanted to go into a 4th base. This isn't really all that he could give to this attack, which I think he'd have to really be all in here. He'd have to give every last ounce of his strength. Well, I guess Templar Archives, he is banking 1,000 minerals. Or gas, sorry. So, okay, that does make sense. But he's also getting a +1 armor that's not going to benefit this particular attack. To be clear, I'm not sure it would have worked anyways. even if he had milked every last penny into the attack. I don't think it actually works. Spirit has the sensor tower. He would have seen this coming. He did see it coming with the medevac, actually. His army staying firmly at home, not playing any risky business with picking up a drop. And Trigger would not win with the attack itself, which now means, as he has appropriately scared his opponent, Spirit has to take this seriously. It does mean he has some room to finally organize his home life, get his probes back to mining, rebuild the pylons to power his buildings, and get his 4th base. So Trigger has a chance to play out the macro game, but Spirit is there a bit faster. He's going to have better upgrades, 2-2 versus 1-1. He's already going to have some upgrades for his air weapons even. Lots of production. Perfect Terran army with the Medivacs, Vikings, and the Ghosts. Fusion Core's on the way, so he's prepared to make a transition over into Liberators. He's already there. Trigger needs more time to be on the same type of situation as Spirit, so he needs to take a good engagement or some big distraction. Currently, no such distraction is being set up. A couple of Zealots hardly counts. Trigger's on the run, trying to save some of his Colossus, but they're pretty much goners. He even tries to save one with the War Prism, but that goes down. And Trigger is just depending on some of these Disruptor balls hitting. Nexus looks like it could be sniped. Is Spirit going to go for it? Nope, currently just going to run away. May actually look for the engagement, because why not? It's already going so damn well. Colossus down. Widowmine's pop on the Zealots. Nexus does go down. And the fight is going to be won by Spirit as he dodges that last Disruptor shot. Trigger actually here with basically no chance. 3 Immortals do pack a bit of a punch. The 2-2's been done for, I think, the entirety of this engagement. And Trigger, well, it was actually 2-1, not 1-1. My bad, but still. Might be able to push back this particular engagement, this particular army, but Spirit is on 4 bases back at home. He's still microing the 3 Marauders and 5 Medivacs because the number of Stalkers are just so small. He thinks he might be able to do it. He scans and sees no back, 4th base. No surprise base that means he's misunderstood the situation. No, he understands it correctly. Trigger is on a desperate 3-base economy, sub 100 supply, and Spirit just needs to rally push to victory. A couple of Liberators going to be a huge problem for Trigger too. Trigger probably, he knows he's dead pretty much, but is hoping that Disruptor balls, Spirit might be a little less aggressive than he should be, something like that. It's effectively game over. Spirit's almost maxed out again, almost with that +3 attack as well. More and more Liberators are coming forth. Trigger is in no place to try and be aggressive against Spirit, so these Liberators were always going to be the final death blow. GG. Spirit takes game 2. Now tied up 1-1. Top left, we have Spirit. Bottom right, it is Trigger, who sends out a fairly fast probe. Probably just to get the harassment going on Spirit's side of the map. Lickety split. If he was max packs, I would definitely be throwing out the proxy gate. But I don't know if Trigger's really a fan of that. Is that the direct direction for a probe scout? No, it's not. So he is gonna proxy gate. Wow. All right. All right. I was like, isn't the direct scout this pathway where the SCV's going? Yeah, it is 100%. So Trigger being actually extraordinarily aggressive very early on. Probably didn't want to be SCV scouted. Now this SCV is also going into. Wait. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this isn't the direct scout. But it's hard to tell because it looks like Spirit's also trying to take he's trying to take a path of which he would not be scouted. So I'm pretty sure they did the same thing and they're just confusing me. I'm just unnecessarily confused. Spirit tries to avoid the probe scout to get engineering bay block. Trigger avoids any, scout really to get a proxy gate, then scouts, of course. And Spirit should be figuring something is up. actually checking the main base. Checks the third, in case he missed a probe, seeing the engineering bay block and going, oh shit, and then building the third. Now goes into the main. He's gonna see 1 gas, 1 gateway, an oddly late Summon X core. I should be able to figure it out at this point. So it does kind of suck for Trigger. If Spirit had not SCV scouted and engineering bay blocked, this command center would be going on the low ground and wouldn't be particularly healthy by the time that the units were created. But then a Zealot was not made. He actually did wait for Summon X core. Blocks the wall. Bunker's coming up on 2 different locations. Spirit's gonna put the Reaper, potentially, at that third. But he also needs it back at home. 1 pylon was canceled, another one's built, but that one's just gonna provide that high ground vision. Probe will eventually die. I don't see this working out super well for Trigger. Just gonna find a couple of SCVs, if that. Not even that. Oh, he supply blocked. Oh, here you go. Okay, that's not bad. That's not bad. Spirit's actually supply blocked. The lack of finishing depot. It's quite a pain. He doesn't want to lose any more SCVs. Okay, gonna call down supply. Kind of unfortunate because the command center was gonna finish. So actually that was not a good thing. If he had called down supply 10 seconds earlier, that's totally fine, but that was mistimed actually. No cancel on the supply depot. Cancels that one at the very... I mean, they're both messing up. They both are trying to micro on 2 different sections of the map, and they are both a little off. Trigger actually does send his adepts into the natural, but are not particularly good against SCVs. Well, not in the same way that they are against probes, to be very specific. But, you know, 5 SCVs have gone down. Factory was delayed. Supply depots were delayed. Production was delayed because of the supply depots being delayed. Spirit, however, is delaying the... No, he's not. Not for very long anyways. Spirit's Reaper got 3 probes, and I thought it was going to go back into that bunker, but nope, Reaper died. And so where are we now? Spirit behind 8 workers, so that's okay. He's got 2 orbitals, that's actually fine. Trigger getting into Blink, getting a robo, sending units across the map. There's only Marines right now for Spirit. That factory took a long time to build. The tank is over halfway done, but a little bit of wiggle room for Trigger to be even more of a nuisance. Dep goes down as you won't expect. 4 Stalkers, 1-shot the Marines, and that is the magic number that Spirit should be wary of. Also 1-shot an SCV. Big Daddy Tank should be able to save the day against 5 Stalkers. 4, yes. 5 is a little bit sketch, but the repair has come in, and Trigger actually ends up over-dedicating, losing 2 Stalkers there. Trigger's aggression is probably not going to be done. He's got the proxy gateway still up. He's getting a... Well, he could get a War Prism. He's getting Blink, and in total, he is getting 4 gateways, so he is going to continue the aggression. Observer first, then the War Prism, continuously reinforcing on the front lines. Won't even have to send some units across the map like he usually would. Gonna try and grab this tank, and he will grab it at the cost of 2, no, 3 Stalkers. That's not a... That, as far as direct trade, not worth it for the Protoss. As far as culling the tank numbers, I still don't think it's worth it, actually. Spirit is playing a bit of a dangerous game, going aggressive against the proxy gateway. Especially because, you know, your opponent could be forgetting you afterwards. But it seems like he has hit fast enough that Trigger was not yet ready to go, did not have that Blink, did not have the Stalker numbers, and Spirit has at least denied one aspect of this build, which is the proxy gate, putting Trigger back, of course, down to 3 gateways. But Spirit should not be out here for much longer. Actually, Spirit's making a mistake, I think. The scan didn't see the Warp Prism. Oh boy. Uh-oh. Well, that was, oh, well, that was, I don't know. That actually worked out not at all for Trigger. Oh, I would have been right there with him, honestly. I would have blinked on that too. That looked like an opening. That looked like a gotcha move, but no. Some of Trigger's Stalkers were low already, so the Marines just ripped through them. And even if they weren't low, the Marine count was still, I guess, just enough to actually be intimidating, to actually trade. And now Spirit's ahead in workers. Trigger is almost, not quite reset in his stalkers, but it's not the healthiest count. Spirit has 1 tank. He has swapped off of Tech Lab Factory. That is concerning. Bunker is going to go down. Took a few shots, though. Took a few volleys. Stalker Micro coming with a Warp Prism, but remember that Trigger is from NA and he's playing on EU. It's not going to be perfect. Yeah, I'm no longer concerned for Spirit. No longer concerned. The bunker did its job. The bio count's about to grow too large. They're about to have stim and combat shields. Starport has the medevacs coming out now too. Trigger needs to buy time at this point. He will not be overwhelming his opponent. A couple of zealots tank some of the shots is always clever, but in this case, not going to do a whole lot. Spirit actually pulling the SCVs, you know, thinking this could be a big deal. Now realizing that it wasn't a big deal at all. Even stims forward, takes down a couple more stalkers. Observer even floating into this very oddly placed missile turret. Catches an observer that's misplaced. Catches a warp prism that gets too aggressive. I see how it could work. And it did. And what looks like it could have been an upset is now firmly in favor of Spirit. Trigger data third base up. Of course, that being his natural. So it looks a little funky. He's trying to get the charge and +1 as well as what I assume is going to be Storm. Archons are hefty. They do help, but are a little bit easier to calculate for the Terran. You know, okay, I'll focus fire the Archon, then deal with the Stalkers. Storms, they can be picked up, they can be micro, they can come out of left field. Obviously, they can do big splash damage if you're really not paying attention, where the Archons do little splash damage. So that is the hope of a lot of Protosses who are behind. The problem is against professional Terrans, I mean, they're less likely to bathe in the storms. They're less likely to allow you time to get to storm, to get to a lot of storms, to get to well-positioned storms. And if you get to all of that, then their splits are better than the average person. Their multitasking is better, so they just find you in an area where the High Templars aren't. You know, it is difficult. But it's not Storm. I thought for sure Trigger's gonna go right for Storm. He's gonna try and just add in the Archons, try and bolster the army, and a more like direct fight, less of a almost Hail Mary play. I mean, Storms also help in a direct fight, but they're kind of risky because High Templars themselves are so vulnerable. 13 probes went down. I was paying attention to the wrong one of mines, as was Trigger. Natural base taking some damage. Main base also going to be under attack. Spirit does have the armory, and Trigger had lost those observers, so he is in a lot of trouble. Third base might be cleaned up, but Natural's about to hit again. Main base is about to hit again. He is just going to go all in. Here we go. Zealots, some Stalkers, couple of Archons. Spirit, though, with an equal army supply. Equal upgrades, and Widowmine's about to be positioned. Only thing I notice is the lack of medevacs. Potential for splashback from the Widowmines. Didn't happen. More Zealots still available, though. Oh, tank on the high ground. More bio reinforcements. Medevacs aren't here because they are dropping in Trigger's main base, so Spirit already defending with less than he actually has is not a good sign for Spirit. SCVs do have to be pulled. And Spirit does need to go ahead and just kind of F2 a little bit here. There we go. Medevac's now joining into the fight. Armor is about to finish as well. That one Archon going to get popped. And while the Zealots did get a couple of swipes there, some friendly fire as well, probably from the tank. Spirit still has his production. Trigger has almost no economy at the natural third base, whatever you want to call it, being denied by a Widowmine. Main base getting killed. This army could always come back if it really was that desperate. And Spirit will eventually win this game. Trigger made it very interesting, that is for sure, but there it is. GG. GG.